So I finally did it. I sold the truck that I called a mistake in one of my previous videos. But don't worry, after this video, I'll link to that one. So make sure you get to the end of this one and I'll link right over to that one if you want to see that as well. Why I think that previous truck was a mistake. But I finally got out of that truck. I got something different. And it got me about 10 months closer to financial freedom, or what I consider financial freedom. So let me just re-explain a little bit of why I wanted to get out of the truck that I was in. Originally, the previous truck I had was a $31,000 truck that I bought used. It was off of a lease. It was in great condition. It was a Chevy Silverado 1500. It was a V6, not a V8. I wanted a V6 because I'm not towing a lot. I just like having a truck because it's easy to move furniture. We just bought a house. I use it a bunch to do that. I hunt, so I like to throw, deer or all my hunting stuff in the back of the truck rather than in my back seat so I don't get ticks in there and all that. But really, like I explained in that last video, I didn't need as big of a truck as it was. It was just huge. Like, I didn't like how much space it took up. I didn't like parking with it. I didn't like driving into the city with it, which I had to do for work occasionally. It's not fun to do. So what I wanted to do was either get into a larger SUV that I liked or a smaller truck. And that's exactly what I found. One of the options I was looking at was Nissan Frontiers, and I ended up getting a 2014 Nissan Frontier with 92,000 miles. You might be thinking, you sold a nice Chevy Silverado for over a 10-year-old Nissan Frontier. Don't Nissans suck? Blah, blah, blah. There's going to be all kinds of comments. I don't really care. Anytime I'm making a big purchase like that, I do a lot of research, and I'm pretty comfortable with the car I got. The rust situation isn't bad, which is something you have to worry about where I live in the north, just because of the snow and salt. The rust situation was not bad on this truck. This specific year and generation of the Nissan Frontier is pretty reliable. There's some things that can go wrong, but I have a great mechanic, and I trust him, so that's that. However, let me back up into the other truck. So this Chevy Silverado I originally had, it was a 6-year loan. The monthly payment was $498, which I think I went over in the last video. I think I said $500, but close enough. I still owed $18,000 on it. I had it a little over a year, so I've been paying ahead, which has been great. However, just that monthly payment alone was a lot. $18,000 left to pay off was also a lot. So just having that debt hanging over your head, along with the monthly payments, which, like I said, I paid ahead. At least at the time of selling that truck, I didn't owe until like February of 2026. So I didn't technically owe, but just that monthly payment hanging over your head, as well as the debt hanging over your head, like the total payoff amount. That's really what I'm concerned about, is total payoff amount. I don't really care what the monthly payments are, because my wife and I make a good enough income that that's not going to be our first concern. The first concern is how much debt we're actually in. And that's just a psychological component for me, just owning a depreciating asset, because that vehicle, I bought it for $31,000. It's already not worth $31,000, and I'll get into that when I get into the specifics on how I actually traded it in and the rigmarole, as I would say, that I had to go through to do that. But just the psychological aspect of driving around something that's not appreciating in value and depreciating in value instead, as well as being in debt on that thing. If you own it outright, it's not as big of a deal. But when you owe that much money on it, and it's just constantly, as you're driving it and as the years goes on, it's depreciating in value, that's not like a psychological thing, or that's a psychological thing that kind of negatively impacts my relationship with the vehicle that I have. And so, like I said in that last video, I wanted to get out of this vehicle and find something cheaper, and smaller, which I did. So here's exactly how I did it. First, I did a lot of research into specifically the make and model and years that I was interested in. I had some more expensive options that maybe if I found a good deal on a used one, I could switch from that truck into it. Mainly I was looking at Toyotas. That's my favorite car brand. I think they're the most reliable. I think most people would agree. I was looking at like 4Runners and Tacomas. The problem with those is that, like I said, most people agree that they're reliable, and that oftentimes keeps used car prices for these Toyotas still fairly high. I think it's worth it. However, it wouldn't allow me to accomplish what I wanted to do, which was ultimately get that payoff amount of $18,000 way down, like below $10,000. So really what I was looking for was something like in the $13,000 to $18,000 range as far as an asking price for a vehicle. With that, I could take my truck, which really should have been worth around $27,500, minus my payoff amount, which was around that $18,000, take that extra chunk of change that I get from selling that vehicle and put that on as a down payment towards the next one, ultimately lowering the payoff amount below $10,000. So that's what I was looking for. And it was difficult, like I said, to find some of these Toyotas that I was interested in that price range, at least like for something that is in good shape. So one of the other options was a Nissan Frontier. I had done some research into the comparison between Tacomas and Nissan Frontiers, and really, I think bang for your buck wise, a Nissan Frontier is a great small truck as well, or mid-sized truck as they call it. Now, sure, you're going to lose out on a little bit of the reliability of the Toyota, but for the price you can get them for, I think it makes up for it. So this Nissan Frontier was listed for $14,200, I believe, on the website, and it was a little bit out of town. So I had to leave the state, go to a different state to purchase the vehicle. And I'd never dealt with this dealership. I didn't know much about them. I saw mixed reviews online, so I knew what I was getting into when I go into it. And I can be a little bit of a fierce negotiator. Part of that is all of the fantasy football leagues I'm in. I'm constantly negotiating trades, only partially joking. And the other part is that I've dealt with dealerships a few times now in my life, and I've had to do a lot of the negotiating myself. So I just kind of have some experience in that, as well as watching some videos on YouTube with people who deal with dealerships or work at a dealership themselves and talk about some of the tactics you can use to try to get the best deal possible. So going into it, I knew that this Nissan Frontier that I was looking at really was worth a little bit lower than that $14,000. It was like, I think a fair, like dead fair value is like $13,500 or something like that. And I use Kelley Blue Books to get that value. I just plug in the VIN, look at the pictures, determine, okay, it's in pretty good condition, which of course dealerships don't post pictures of problems on vehicles oftentimes. So sometimes you have to do a little bit of that calculating at the dealership when you're actually looking at the vehicle, which I did as well. So ultimately, the offer that they gave me on my truck, at least at first, was laughable. We had driven 2 hours out of where we live to go to this dealership, and they offered me $19,000 on my 2021 Chevy Silverado with 48,000 miles on it. This was laughable. Kelley Blue Book had that vehicle listed at $27,500 as fair trade-in value. So we were way off. And I told the person I was dealing with at the dealership this exact thing. I said, if you can't get this up to closer to the $27,000 range, then I'm going to leave, because that is a laughable offer. And of course, they come back and they say, oh, well, we have to put new tires on it. It didn't need new tires. And then they say there's a brake sensor thing. Like, yeah, I knew that. It was listed on the dashboard. For them, that's probably less than like a $200 fix. It shouldn't affect the price of the vehicle. But of course, they wanted to bring that up as well. I said, well, if you can't get me close to that $27,000 mark, I'm leaving. And also, I'm not paying over $14,200 on the Nissan Frontier, because that's what it was listed at on their website. And then when I go in person, they want $14,900. So ultimately, after some back and forth, I was able to get a lot closer to the deal that I wanted. I was offered $24,500 for my truck, which was admittedly much lower than what I wanted, but I still think it got me to where I wanted to be in terms of the actual loan payoff amount for the vehicle that I'd end up owning. So all in all, it brought my total payoff amount to around $8,500. And this is a lot closer to where I wanted to be in terms of my own vehicle, because I can have that paid off hopefully by the beginning of 2026. I'm already saving up money to pay that off. The only thing I have to consider is that I bought this out of state, so I still have not paid state taxes on the purchase of the vehicle. I have to pay taxes on the state that I live in, not the state that I bought it in. So once I get the registration information from the dealership, which it's already been over a month, unfortunately, I still haven't got that. So I'll have to be reaching out to them soon. But once I get that, I can pay the state taxes on that, which I've been saving up for, and then all the rest of it that I've been saving up for also will go straight to that loan payoff amount, or the principal on the vehicle loan. And so far, I've been super happy with the Nissan Frontier. I don't drive a lot. I work from home. We have a baby as well, and all the car seat stuff is set up in my wife's vehicle, which is much, much newer, much probably safer, at least in terms of safety features. As you can hear my baby boy talking in the background. He's going to be a big feature on the channel, as you can't tell. He has a big personality. But most of the time, we're taking my wife's vehicle, and he's in the back of that. If I need to, I can still put him in the back of the Nissan Frontier. It does have full seats in the back, so that's nice at least. But really, it's a great truck for what I need it for. which is occasionally driving, occasionally taking stuff in the bed, and hunting and putting that stuff in the bed as well, which luckily I just got a deer about a week and a half ago, so that was awesome for that. But ultimately, it was a difficult thing to do, to sell a nicer vehicle for an older, less nice vehicle. It's not an easy decision to make, but it was the right one for my family because, like I said in my last video, ultimately we want to be able to have my wife stay at home with our baby rather than, having people come to the house every day while I'm working to watch him. Also, our monthly payment, if something comes up and we can't pay ahead, is less than half of what it was before, so that helps out a bunch because the medical bills from our baby being born are just finally starting to kick in, and that's $300 a month. So ultimately, between the medical bills and the new truck payment, we're paying about the same as we were before. But if I still had that other truck, we'd be paying $800 a month just for the truck and the medical bills that came in, along with all of our other debt that we currently had. So, addressing a few of the comments in the last video that said, I'm a sorry excuse for a man, I beg to differ, and if you still think so, catch me outside. How about that? Other than that, thanks for watching this video. Check this one out next to see exactly why I go over it was such a big mistake to buy that first truck in the first place. And so hopefully this video helped you if you're thinking about downsizing or lowering your monthly payments or just lowering your overall debt amount, which is what I was trying to do. Hopefully this helped, and hopefully this video helps you as well. Thank you. See you in the next one.